In this webinar, I'm going to be looking at entering amounts received into your Kashflow accounting system, and for this purpose I am displaying a flowchart on the screen showing the matters that need to be considered prior to data entry. Exactly the same decisions need to be made when entering amounts paid. We are going to assume for this purpose that there is a bank feed available. In other words, Kashflow is set up to import the transactions directly from your bank account, and so the first decision to be made is whether the data entry is going to be from that bank feed or manual. It goes without saying therefore that if you are entering monies received through any other means, most likely in cash, the bank feed decision does not need to be made since the entry will be manual. Assuming the entry is manual, the next decision that needs to be made is whether the amount received relates to one item in Kashflow or multiple items, and having made that decision, it will depend how the data is entered. Assuming the amount relates to an item on your bank statements and you are entering the amounts manually, it is important that the amount which ends up appearing in the bank account of Kashflow is the same as the amount shown on the bank statements, as this will make it much easier to agree the items on the bank statement to the items in Kashflow later on. If the item is entered directly from the bank feed, it will automatically be the same when being posted to Kashflow as it will be shown on the bank statements. I will demonstrate the data entry for all three options in this webinar, since it is extremely likely that when using Kashflow you will have to use all three elements of the data entry process. The first item I'm going to show you how to post is a manual entry relating to one sales invoice, which we are going to assume was received in the bank and that the client paid the full amount. And so I'm at the dashboard in Kashflow, and on the left hand side we can go to the invoices that we have raised, and I can look for the invoice which I know has been paid. For this option I'm just going to take the first one. We can go straight into the invoice, and you will be familiar with this screen from the earlier webinars, only now we are turning our attention to the bottom of the screen, which relates to payments, and this invoice is for £200. So click add payment. We can enter the date that the payment is being made. It defaults to the full amount, but if I wanted to change that because the client had only made a part payment, I can just amend the amounts. I then select which bank account the item relates to, and so here I'm going to leave it as though it's been paid into the bank by our clients. The method, you can decide to change that if you wish, and if you wish to make any notes regarding the payment, then do. For instance, if the client's only paid half the amount of money and you've had a discussion, you may wish to make a note of when he has promised to pay the balance. Click save, and that has now been entered into Kashflow and will show that the invoice has been paid, and because we selected the Barclays current account, it will also be entered in that part of Kashflow. Now let's look at the option where you are receiving an amount of money which is for more than one sales invoice. For this purpose I'm at the sales invoice screen as I was a moment ago, whereas instead of now clicking on an invoice, at the top of the screen you need to click on new batch payments. And the same options are there, albeit they look slightly different, because now we are selecting which account we are actually crediting this money to, but the same options come up, and I'm going to keep with the Barclays current accounts. Again, you can put an optional change in the method if you wish, and you can change the date of the receipt, because you may be entering this in a number of days later. And now you select which invoices are being paid, and for this purpose I'm just going to select the top two and assume both of these have been paid by ticking on the box to the left. On the right hand side of the screen you can see the amounts that relate to those invoices. So the £200 is the same as the invoice we had a few moments ago, and the other one was for 7,200. And because I've ticked both, these has been added together to arrive at an entry field in the bank account of 7,400. Again, I can amend either of these amounts if the client has part paid the invoice. And note that I could, if I wanted to, select other customers if this was a paying in from a paying in book. Maybe clients are still paying by cheque and you've actually paid in on one paying in slip amounts from more than one client. As long as the amount received here agrees with the amount that is paid into the bank account, click Save at the top of the screen, and there you can see your batch, which are the two items we had, totaling £7,400. So we are now entering the final part of this webinar, which is going to be demonstrating how to allocate monies from a bank feed against sales invoices raised. And instead of going from the sales invoice screen, we are now going to go to the bank account, and we select that from the left hand side of our Kashflow menu, and that will take us to the bank account screen. And of course you could have more than one account. I've already set up a Barclays feed on this, and so I will go to the bank feed section and click import. We did show in a separate webinar how to set up the link between Kashflow and your bank account, and I'm going to go down to an item here for £216 which was received, and I'm going to assume that this is a part payment against the invoice for £7,200. So if I click on the match option, up comes the list of outstanding invoices, and for this item I'm going to allocate that against this £7,200 invoice by ticking the box next to it. I can then click assign, and now it has matched that item for me. We're not finished yet. We now need to import that transaction into our Kashflow system. So at the top right hand corner we click import now, and that will then import that transaction and show it to us on the bank account screen, which you can now see we have imported the amount for £216.